It's Zerid Osmani, Head of Global Long-Term Unconstrained Equities at Martin Currie. We want to discuss megatrends in this presentation and how it fits our analytical approach as long-term unconstrained investors. We have identified three megatrends. The first one is demographic change. The second one is future of technology across all industries and areas of the world. And the third one is resource scarcity. These megatrends are going to be driving market dynamics in various segments on a multi-decades time frame. These megatrends have got some overlapping areas, which provide some very strong growth opportunities if we can find them to be valued attractively. Within each mega theme, we have identified sub-themes, which we list on the left and right of the diagram on screen, and which we have color-coded in the same way as the megatrends are appearing. We have assessed how exposed to each of the sub-themes are all of our holdings in our funds. This gives us a more accurate estimate of our fund's exposure to the sub-themes. At the high level, we can assess how diversified we are across the three megatrends, as shown from the dots. We can also zoom in on the various megatrends to assess how exposed we are to each sub-theme. Zooming in on demographic change, we can see that the fund is very exposed to the growth in emerging markets middle class, to healthier living, aging population, and urbanization. We can click in each of the sub-themes and we can get the list of stocks that gives us that exposure in the fund. Especially on the growth in the emerging markets middle class, it is clearly an important growth driver in the decades to come. Estimates show that the number of middle class people in Asia could more than double over the next 15 years. We estimate that consumption of emerging markets middle class could grow at an annualized rate of high single digit over that period. Consumption of luxury goods by emerging market middle class could even grow at an annualized rate of low teens for some brands, which is a very strong growth trend for investors to harness. This can be through luxury goods and apparel brands or high-end automakers. All in all, various strong growth drivers in the demographic change megatrend. If we now zoom in on the future of technology megatrend, we can see that we have good exposure to IT outsourcing, cloud computing, online gaming, and cybersecurity. And in the intersection of demographic changes and future of technology to digital natives, consumerization of healthcare, and genomics in particular. On cybersecurity specifically, we estimate that spend on cybersecurity will be growing at an annualized rate of 10% to 2030, in a market where IT spend will be growing at around 5% per annum. In other words, growth in cybersecurity will be double the growth of IT spend. So again, a very powerful long-term trend for investors to harness. If we then look at the third megatrend, resource scarcity, we can see that we have exposure to climate change, alternative energy, food and water scarcity, but we are also thinking about resource scarcity in broad terms, and therefore have exposure to the China Infrastructure Initiative, because physical infrastructure is also a resource scarcity. We also have exposure to lending and investing, because funding is a resource scarcity, in particular in some parts of emerging markets. And in the intersection of resource scarcity and future of technology, we have sizable exposure to robotics and automation, because human resources is a form of resource scarcity. Zooming in on electric vehicles, this is a very powerful growth trend for us. We estimate that the electric vehicle market will grow at an annualized rate of 30% to 2030. It isn't often in history that we have a sizable market that has taken best part of 100 years to establish itself, and that is mandated by regulation to shift from one technology to another, in this case from combustion engines to electric, at the very same time as consumer demand is shifting in that same direction. When we look at the electric vehicle opportunity as investors, it is important to look at it across the whole ecosystem, not just thinking about automakers such as Tesla. We want to find the most attractive opportunities across the whole value chain. In fact, we often find that being at the forefront of the consumer, which is where the automakers are, is not a great opportunity, as it is more competitive, with more aggressive pricing, and exposes investors to consumer choice risk, a risk we don't want to run. Instead, we find opportunities further up the value chain that offer niche products that have high barriers to entry, hence strong pricing power, and therefore generate high returns and that can give us access to the explosive EV growth opportunity without having to run the risk of consumer choice. It helps us reduce the risk exposure, in other words. All in all, you can see how looking at investment opportunities through our megatrends analytical framework gives us better visibility of attractive growth trends and a more accurate estimate of our portfolio exposures to the various themes. It also helps us manage risk exposures and diversification more efficiently. And finally, it gives us the ability to point our research work where we find some potential attractive growth opportunities, all of which helps us manage our portfolios more efficiently as long-term unconstrained investors.